Welcome to Citywide Mechanical. Today we will be going over our safety orientation, which will talk a lot about the different types of products and services that we offer to our clients and what you will be a part of. If you have any questions, make sure that you ask the appropriate management, for they can make sure that every question that you have can and will be answered. Before we talk about safety, let me explain to you a little bit about Citywide Mechanical. Citywide Mechanical was established in 1985, and up to date, we have completed nearly 4,000 projects. On our construction projects, we focus from $50,000 to $15 million projects. The photographs that I'm showing you now are some of the groundbreaking photographs with clients that we worked with, for example, like Austin Commercial or Manhattan. This one particular photograph is going to be the Rolex project, to where this following project is going to be the groundbreaking work that we're doing with Austin Commercial. We are also working in wrapping up Blue Ciel, which Hunt is the general contractor as well. In some of the photographs that you're going to be seeing is preliminary work that is actually being done now with Manhattan and with VCC, which are projects that we're very proud of and soon to be wrapping up. All of our lead men will have a 30-hour OSHA training card minimum, as well as first aid, CPR, and AED training. They're going to be considered the competent people on the job who will have the authority to identify any type of hazards, any type of precautionary measures that need to be taken, and be able to instruct you as an employee and or as a temp appropriately. So now let's talk about some of the general health and safety rules. For example, smoking, illumination, and ventilation. If you are a smoker, make sure that you identify where the smoking area is on the job. We do not want you smoking while you are actually working. Make sure that you communicate with your lead man or your supervisor and go to designated areas during your break time, whether it's at lunch or the breaks that you take throughout the day. Next, we're going to be talking about housekeeping and sanitation. When we do housekeeping, it's not just done at the end of the day, but we do it throughout the day. The last thing we want is to create any type of hazards to where any of our employees can be exposed or additional subcontractors that are working around us. When it comes to hand and power tools, make sure that you are using the correct tool, using the tool correctly, and make sure that it has a double insulation in addition to grounding. Make sure that you check your tools and equipment prior to use. If you are having any problems with your tools, make sure to notify the competent person, for we can have it addressed prior to starting the workday. For fire prevention, make sure that you have access to a fire extinguisher, especially those that are high hazard areas where there is activities that fire extinguishers are required. And remember the PASS rule, which is point, aim, squeeze, and sweep. All the fire extinguishers on the job sites should be an ABC rating unless you are working with molten metals. Welding and cutting. Make sure that removable of flammables, proper PPE, and storage, as well as fire blankets and curtains, are available if you are welding. Depending on the job that you're on, it could require a hot work permit, as well as making sure that there is a fire watch assigned for a minimum of 30 minutes after the job has been completed. Compressed air and gas. Make sure that the storage is secure and 20 feet separation between the different types of gases, which could be acetylene and oxygen. We do not want to store these adjacent to each other unless you have the proper type of barriers for a minimum of 30 minutes that can separate these two types of combustibles. With electrical safety, 100% of the time, make sure that you are using a GFCI, a ground fault circuit interrupter, on any temporary power, especially extension cords or any type of area of demolition. Make sure that you test your GFCI prior to work to assure that your ground fault circuit interrupter is working. When it comes to aerial lifts, any type of scissor lift, boom lift, any type of lift requires proper training and certification on behalf of Citywide safety staff. You are not allowed to use equipment unless a certified Citywide operator is on the equipment, for example, a scissor lift and or a boom lift. Make sure that proper fall protection has been assigned. Make sure that training is documented prior to any employee and or temporary service utilizing boom lifts and or scissor lifts. Make sure that you understand the contract requirements when it comes to safety. With scaffolding, the competent person or the supervisor must be able to identify any type of hazards that deal with planking and decking, ladders, guardrails, and thorough inspection. No one is allowed on scaffolding unless the competent person is there and or you have had the proper training for scaffold. When it comes to trenching and excavations, the competent person must be trained with daily inspections, proper paperwork, protective systems, and inspections prior to working. It is very important that you understand exactly what you're doing, what the hazards are, and making sure that you fill out your JHA prior to working with any type of excavation. Fall protection is required 100% of the time, any time above 6 feet. There are different types of fall protection with anchorage, inspection, area lifts. Make sure that you understand through the competent person and or our safety manual on what is required for fall protection above 6 feet in any working area. Other than the sheet metal shop, which is at 4 feet of height for fall protection. Fleet safety. Make sure that you understand the speed limits. Make sure that you always have your seat belt and make sure that you are reporting accidents accordingly. If you are driving a Citywide vehicle, make sure that you have a current driver's license and insurance and background checks submitted to the safety director prior to driving any Citywide vehicle. Also, there is no smoking allowed in any Citywide vehicle. When it comes to cranes and working with lifts, our supervisor, our lead man, our competent person will make sure that the proper documentation has been procured and in place, whether it's through our subs and or self-performance. Make sure that you understand what the hazards are, the fall zones, and no one, I repeat, no one is allowed to do rigging without having gone through a rigging class first. You could be asked to put in the danger tape, you could be asked to get the rigging, but once again, no one is allowed to do the rigging other than certified riggers and competent people. First aid and CPR equipment should be located in the Connex and or in our job box, as well as with the superintendent. If you are working with a 1 or a 2-man crew, normally they'll keep it inside of their vehicles, but make sure that you have access to this and you know exactly where it's located. Be aware of blood-borne pathogens. Prior to assisting anybody that could be in a condition where excess bleeding is taking place, make sure that you have access to the proper PPE before applying first aid, CPR, or an AED machine. If you're a temporary employee, make sure that your safety department has properly trained you with lead exposure, silica exposure, and or asbestos exposure. If you're a new Citywide employee, this will be covered in your 10-hour course. Make sure that you understand the differences, make sure that you understand exposure, and make sure that you understand what needs to be done for us as an employer and you as an employee to minimize, reduce, or to eliminate any type of hazards. When we deal with confined space, we properly train our employees to make sure that they understand the do's and the don'ts. We train here in our training facility here at Citywide prior to any type of implementation. We want to make sure that you have a clear understanding of what has to be done and needs to be done. And the majority of the time, this type of work will be executed by Citywide employees. When it comes to electrical safety, make sure that you understand the do's and don'ts of electrical safety. For example, lockout, tagout. Only trained personnel can properly execute policy and procedures in applying lockout, tagouts. Unless you have properly been certified to work with electricity, you are not allowed to work with electricity. Fork trucks. Any type of trained personnel can utilize fork trucks. They can utilize the SkyTracks, but once again, each individual utilizing this equipment has to be certified and trained through Citywide prior to use. Any type of certifications outside of Citywide is not permissible to use any type of moving equipment. When it comes to personal protective equipment, 100% of the time, hard hats, safety glasses, vests, boots, proper gloves when needed, face shields when chipping from above, clothing with a 4-inch sleeve, hearing protection, and respiratory protection is available. If you are needing some of these items, please make sure to notify your competent person, your lead man, your superintendent. If you are a temporary employee, this should be supplied by your employer. When it comes to incident reporting, make sure that you understand what is required before, during, and after, especially after experiencing a work-related injury. When's the best time to report it? Immediately. Who do you notify? You're going to notify your foreman, your superintendent, and your safety director. When it comes to substance abuse, we do have testing procedures for pre-employment, for post-accident, for annual, for random, as well as for suspicion. Anytime you are on medication and or a prescription, it's to your best interest to let your supervisor be aware of this prior to any type of work, just in case an accident was to take place. We have proof that you are on some type of prescription medicine that can help solidify any type of questions or comments. We also have an emergency assistance program to where if he or she is having any type of challenges with drugs and or alcohol, that they're welcome to reach out to their safety director to try to find the proper resources in addressing any type of concerns that could relate to a job activity. Make sure that you write down my phone number, 817-298-6500. You can reach me 7 days a week, day or night, in case there is an emergency, in case there is something you feel uncomfortable with, in case there's any type of violation that you are not comfortable with to where your supervisor can't explain. Feel free to call me at 817-298-6500. Also call me in case of an emergency and or an accident. Make sure that you understand the emergency phone numbers that you need to have access to on your job site, which will definitely be your supervisor and safety. Prior to starting any job, make sure that you are filling out, if it's job site required, your job hazard analysis. Your job hazard analysis will identify what work tasks need to take place, any type of job hazards, and any type of precautions needed to address the job activities for that day. By signing this, you are saying that you understand, you recognize, and you will comply to any type of safety-related issues on the job site. Disciplinary action is part of a progressive policy, which is an informal action, a verbal, a written, a suspension, dismissal, and a gross misconduct. Make sure if you are a Citywide employee that you go over this information in your employee handbook. And if you are a temporary employee and there is any type of disciplinary action needed, more than likely you will be removed from the project and you will be reassigned by your company. When it comes to your hazard communication, make sure that you understand how to obtain information on the SDSs for the project. Make sure that you know exactly where they're at. Make sure that you understand the HazCom communication program details, the labeling system, and protective measures and PPE. If you are a Citywide employee, this will be covered in your 10-hour. If you are a temporary employee, you must acknowledge that your safety personnel and or training for your company has informed you and properly trained you prior to coming out to our job sites. When it comes to an emergency action plan, make sure that you understand the alarm systems, for example, an air horn. Make sure that you understand where the shelter areas are. Make sure that you understand where the muster zones are, as well as the accounting procedures. This should take place prior to you working on the job site, as well as possible job site orientation. Make sure that you know the address to the job facility that you are working on. When it comes to personal protective equipment, once again, 100% of the time, hard hats and safety glasses must be worn. If you have prescription glasses and they're not ANSI certified, you cannot put side shields on them. You must wear goggles. Make sure that you have the proper safety vest. Make sure that you have the proper hand protection when needed, the proper foot protection, the proper face protection, proper hearing protection, protective clothing, and personal fall arrest. You as an employee and or a temporary employee are responsible for double checking and ensuring that you have the proper PPE at all times when on a job site. When it comes to ladder safety, make sure when you're using a step ladder not to use the top 2 steps, and make sure that you use the belly button rule, which means do not get on the ladder above your belly button. Make sure there are always 3 points of contact, ascending and or descending. You are not to carry anything up a ladder. Make sure that you have the proper inspections. Make sure that you have the proper footing. When it comes to an extension ladder, make sure that you have the proper 4-to-1 rule, footing, secured at the top and or the bottom if you are working on anything other than concrete, for example, dirt or soil. Make sure that you understand the weight capacities, the proper use, care, and storage. You are not allowed to get an A-frame ladder and close it and lean it against the wall for accessibility. An A-frame ladder should always be open. You have now completed the Citywide Mechanical Employee Safety Orientation and that you are familiar with its contents. You will sign below showing that you understand and that you will abide by these policies as well as the general accepted safe work practice subject to disciplinary action. You will agree and do whatever is possible to prevent injury and illness to yourself and to others. Make sure that you sign this and that you get it to your proper supervisor. Thank you for joining Citywide Mechanical. Your orientation has concluded.